Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the aftermath of the Eaton and Palisades fires in Los Angeles. But, we aren't just looking at the obvious physical destruction. We're actually digging into a fascinating and, honestly, pretty urgent, invisible danger that gets left behind long after the embers have cooled down. We're going to look closely at what's literally hiding right beneath our feet.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to imagine that deceptive calm that settles over a neighborhood after a massive fire is finally put out. The sky clears up, the fire trucks pack up and leave, and on the surface, well, the immediate threat seems completely gone. But is the danger truly over? What we're discovering through recent data is that the end of the fire is actually just the beginning of a totally different kind of environmental hazard.
Because here's the thing, when homes burn to the ground, they don't just magically disappear. The structure itself might be reduced to ash, sure, but the chemical compounds within that structure, they stick around. Think about everything inside a normal house. You've got everyday household items, paint, plumbing, appliances, complex construction materials. When all of that is exposed to extreme heat, it doesn't just evaporate. Instead, it breaks down and releases hazardous chemicals directly into the ground, which permanently alters the soil chemistry of the entire area. And this brilliantly illustrates why the soil in these specific burn zones is just so highly toxic. In the Altadena neighborhoods that were devastated by the Eaton fire, a staggering 96% of the homes were built before 1978. Now you might be wondering, why does that year matter? Well, because that's the exact year lead-based paint was finally banned. So almost every single home that burned down in this specific area contained massive amounts of legacy hazardous materials, things like lead, arsenic, and asbestos. And all of that just melted right down into the earth.
Which brings us to the cleanup effort, and this is very much an iceberg situation. After the fires, the Army Corps of Engineers came in to do what's called a Phase 2 cleanup. Their protocol? Well, they removed the top 6 inches of soil from these burned lots. Just 6 inches. I mean, it sounds like a start, right? But as you'll see in a moment, treating this like a surface-level issue completely ignores the massive, massive danger lurking just below that scrape line.
Because, honestly, scraping the surface simply isn't enough. Independent testing was recently done by both the LA Times and the LA County Department of Public Health, and their findings were incredibly revealing. They found out that taking away just those top 6 inches of dirt actually left the vast majority of the problem behind. The toxic chemicals had already leached deep down into the earth, way past the point of the government's initial cleanup pass.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the undeniable contrast in the numbers. To put this into perspective, the established, supposedly safe state standard for lead in soil is 80 milligrams per kilogram. But the actual testing at some of these cleared properties in Altadena, they found lead levels exceeding 240 milligrams per kilogram. That is literally over 3 times the acceptable safe limit, and it's just sitting right there in the dirt of residential neighborhoods.
And the crazy part is, lead is just one piece of this giant toxic puzzle. Let's walk through some of the other specific heavy metals left behind. When everyday man-made things, like lithium-ion batteries, jewelry, or automotive parts melt down, they create this highly hazardous cocktail in the dirt. We're talking about arsenic, which is a potent carcinogen linked to severe gastrointestinal issues and skin lesions. There's mercury, known to cause serious neurological damage and kidney failure. And then you have metals like cadmium, chromium, cobalt, and nickel. All of these pose significant respiratory and cancer risks just by simply being present in the environment.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to connect the data to the human element. Think about who's actually interacting with the dirt in a residential neighborhood. You've got a homeowner maybe planting a new garden, just trying to bring some life back to their property, or a construction worker digging a foundation for a rebuilt home, or, and this is the big one, a child playing in their own backyard. These groups are at an incredibly high risk of accidentally ingesting the soil or inhaling contaminated dust that just gets kicked up by the wind.
Section 1. The Government Cleanup Gap.
So historically, California's disaster response protocol involved really comprehensive soil testing and thorough remediation. They essentially made sure the ground was actually safe before moving on. However, following the Eaton and Palisades fires, FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers actually departed from this historical precedent. The current protocol? Well, like we talked about, they do a minimal 6-inch soil removal. But here's the crucial detail. They do absolutely zero verification testing afterward to confirm that the site is actually safe.
So the crucial point is that this policy shift creates a huge vacuum. Without any municipal, state, or federal body stepping in to mandate and actually fund that necessary follow-up testing, the burden falls entirely on the individual. Imagine being a homeowner who has literally just lost everything in a natural disaster, and now you are left completely on your own to figure out if the very land you own is even safe enough to live on.
Section 2. The financial and market fallout. Homeowners in these burn zones are facing what is, essentially, a massive financial double whammy. I mean, they aren't just paying the already astronomical costs of rebuilding an entire house from scratch. Now, because of that lack of government verification, they're facing thousands of dollars in unforeseen, privately funded safety assessments, soil testing, and potentially massive toxic cleanup bills just to make their lots legally and practically safe to build on again.
And the ripple effects of this are just profound. For prospective buyers or investors who might be looking to help revitalize these neighborhoods, the sheer uncertainty of unverified toxic soil makes the investment incredibly risky. When buyers get scared away by potential contamination, property values inevitably drop. This creates a really chilling effect that dramatically slows down the whole community's ability to recover and rebuild.
Section 3. Taking back control. Practical steps. Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual action plan. First off, you absolutely must conduct independent testing using state-certified environmental labs. You just have to know exactly what you're dealing with. Second, implement physical barriers. If you can't remove all the soil, use hardscapes or heavy mulch to essentially cap that contaminated dirt. Third, protect your indoor air quality by using high-quality HEPA filters in your rebuilt home to catch any airborne dust. And fourth, practice safe landscaping. Use ground cover and gravel to secure those contaminants so they aren't easily getting kicked up into the air.
It's also super important to recognize that if independent testing confirms high levels of contamination, surface-level fixes just won't cut it. Safe remediation might actually require digging out and replacing way more soil than the government's initial 6-inch pass. You may have to excavate significantly deeper and bring in completely clean topsoil just to guarantee the ground is permanently safe for your family.
Now, while those individual actions are totally critical, a truly equitable recovery requires long-term, macro solutions. To fix this on a systemic level, policymakers really need to establish state-funded testing programs to take that financial burden off the victims. We need absolute transparency and clear communication from authorities about these risks. And finally, there absolutely has to be targeted insurance and funding assistance provided by state and local governments, specifically designed to help folks who are uninsured or underinsured cover these really massive remediation costs.
And this isn't just some isolated opinion. There's actually a growing consensus here. Environmental researchers and local authorities are actively calling for California's state government to resume the comprehensive soil testing and remediation protocols that they used in the past. Experts pretty much across the board agree that the state must step back in to restore confidence, safety, and just a basic sense of normalcy to these devastated areas.
Which leaves us with a really critical decision to make as a society. Will we just allow the recovery of these communities to be left entirely to chance, shifting all that heavy burden onto the victims? Or will we demand the protocols and the support necessary to ensure we build back safer, healthier, and more resilient than before? It's a provocative question for sure, and one I really hope leaves you eager to learn more about environmental rebuild strategies and advocacy. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive in The Explainer. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll catch you next time.